Well, we start with the markets as we always do here on NYSE Live. Joining me now in studio with more is Michael Renking. He's Senior Market Strategist at the New York Stock Exchange. Michael, great to see you this morning.
Good morning, Kristen. Thanks for having me.
Inflection debuting yesterday here at the New York Stock Exchange. Is it an inflection point in quantum and capital markets?
Yeah, so I mean, interesting, all right. I mean, a very exciting day. Kind of inflection, at that leading edge of quantum technology, right? So, kind of very excited to have them, kind of join, kind of our community of listed companies. In terms of the equity markets, right, we're potentially at, kind of an interesting inflection point, as you kind of point out, right, in that, we've had, kind of the markets are kind of hovering right around all-time highs, but we've had pretty significant rotations beneath the surface. Just yesterday at the lows, before we bounced, the NYSE FANG Plus Index was down almost 20% from Halloween, right? But yet you have the S&P 500, which is within 1-2% of its all-time high, right? So if you can see some of those stocks, some of the beaten up, kind of AI disruption names that have kind of been a big theme within the market for the last couple of weeks start to stabilize, right? We could start to potentially kind of see the S&P push to new all-time highs.
Now, any volatility, is that on the horizon? And I ask only because some people who have been watching the charts have said that could come into play in this first quarter.
Yeah, so look, I think, the idea that we're going to see some volatility and some, kind of potentially kind of a reset of positioning, kind of is a very real thing, right? We're watching, kind of some pretty key technical levels, right? So yesterday, the S&P 500 did break below its 100-day moving average at 68.12, but we held the lows from mid-January and February right around 67.80, right? So if we were to kind of break below that level, right, you could see things get a little bit more dynamic. Now, we are in options expiration week, right? So speaking of volatility, today, kind of VIX futures kind of expire, so it's like VIXpiration, and then you have kind of options expiration, kind of later this week. Now, we saw a little bit of kind of vol suppressing kind of trading yesterday, right? So as markets moved, kind of moved lower, we did see kind of that bid come back into the tape.
Stay with us. We are going to send things over to the boardroom now for exclusive coverage of Inflection's executive remarks. Michael will join us on the other side. All right, everyone, you were listening there to Inflection's CEO, Matt Kinsella, alongside there with NYSE Vice Chair on the left-hand side, Michael Harris, now getting, of course, a memorable gift to celebrate this moment. I want to bring back in Michael Harris, our senior market strategist here at the New York Stock Exchange. He's based on the trading floor on a regular basis. Michael, as we head into today's trading session, one of the big things for Wall Street seems to be, of course, these Fed minutes out at 2 p.m. Eastern. What are you going to be watching for?
Yeah, look, I mean, the last Fed meeting, kind of was pretty uneventful, right? Kind of all things considered, and Chair Powell suggested there was pretty broad consensus to leave rates unchanged. Markets will look for a little bit of language around that. He also suggested that kind of the tension between the dual mandate had also kind of eased a little bit, right? So I don't think I'm not expecting any big surprises coming out of today's minutes. We have heard from Fed officials, kind of speaking on the media circuit, over the last couple of weeks. So like all things considered, as far as Fed minutes go, probably a little bit quieter than some of the more recent ones.
All right, we'll be waiting to see the action. Again, markets pointing to a fractionally higher open here at the New York Stock Exchange. That's Michael Renking, Senior Market Strategist at the NYSE. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.